Consumers want to know the facts about the products they buy, but America's agricultural landscape is not easy to navigate. Between different companies, scientific advancement, government regulations, advertisement campaigns, and an unhealthy amount of myth and misconception, anyone would be hard-pressed to make sense of it. That's where Real Ag comes in. From the producers who make your food, to the store where you buy the final product, and everything in between. This is Real Ag. Now, here's your host, Kyle Bauer.
The growth of artificial insemination in cattle began back in the 1930s and 1940s. AI has become one of the most effective tools available to cattle producers to improve productivity and profitability of their cattle operation. Advancing the quality of the herd, improve genetics, and reduce bull costs are just a few of the advantages of AI. But is it worth the investment, risk, and management? We'll learn more about artificial insemination in cattle on this episode of Real Ag.
Production of Real Ag is made possible in part by an underwriting grant from
the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by farmers.
What is AI, or artificial insemination?
Artificial insemination is the process of collecting a bull, putting it into a semen straw, and going into the uterus of a cow and fertilizing her egg just like a bull would, only we're able to use higher quality genetics and increase genetics faster, and whether it be weaning weight, yearling weights, carcass qualities, calving ease, and you plus with using a bull that gets more widely used, you're able to get more reliability in those genetics.
AI, or artificial insemination, is a means that beef and dairy producers can utilize proven and select bulls, proven bulls, to be able to utilize in their herd to either make changes, improvements, create a better product.
Where do you get the semen?
There are several companies across the country you can get semen from. There's 4 big ones and several smaller ones. And most of those companies have a rep that is somewhere close to you. If you're using any certified bull stud, they are regulated by the NAAB and Certified Semen Service. So for those companies to be able to collect that semen, put it in a straw, and sell it, those bulls have to pass several, and I don't know all of them, but several tests that they don't have BVD, IBR, blue tongue, and the list goes on. And normally that's about a 60-day process for those bulls. And then after that, they get the CSS stamp of approval to put on the semen straw, and then those bulls are for sale in the United States. You go to other countries, that enters into a whole nother ball of wax as far as the health tests that those bulls are required to do, and then it gets into storage situations of how things are stored and different things like that. But in the U.S., as long as that straw has CSS on it, it's approved. The bull was approved for the health requirements.
The semen is collected from bulls that are deemed to be good bulls that can be utilized. It's collected at different bull studs. Across the U.S. there's different locations, and they use a teaser animal, and the bull mounts, they put it in an AV, and then it is processed at a lab to make sure it's viable and good quality, and it's extended, so it basically dilutes the concentration, and it is frozen through a slower process, and then is stored in liquid nitrogen at negative 360 degrees.
How is it transported?
It is transported in liquid nitrogen. There is a stainless steel tank, and it's a tank inside of a tank, and so to be able to hold that liquid nitrogen, we have a vacuum between those two tanks, because liquid nitrogen is negative 320 degrees, and so to be able to maintain that nitrogen for a reasonable length of time, we use that vacuum, and then in that tank there's canisters, and in those canisters set canes that in each of those canes they put 10 straws of semen. So the average tank will hold 500 to 600 straws of semen.
The semen's transported to whoever orders it or wants it through what we call dry shippers. That basically it's styrofoam that's been soaked in liquid nitrogen, and so it's able to ship that product at that negative 360 degrees, and it lasts about 4 to 6 days. So it's shipped FedEx, UPS.
What information appears on the semen straw?
On the semen straw, you'll have the CSS stamp. If it is a registered bull, you'll have the registration number. You will have the bull's name, and then also you will have the bull's semen stud code, which the first number of that suggests where the semen is collected. The next 2 letters tells you the breed of the bull, and then the next 4 to 5 numbers tells you the number of that bull within that stud. And so within a stud, no bull will ever have the same number.
There is the registration number as well as their name, the registered name. There's a cane code, so every bull stud has a cane code or a certain 4-digit number that's assigned to a bull. And then along with that, there's a collection code as to when that bull was collected. There's a series of traits that are called EPDs, or expected progeny differences. That's in the beef side of it. The dairy side has different characteristics they measure. But they utilize those EPDs to make selection or make decisions based on how those bulls measure up for different traits. Every bull stud has a catalog, and then they also have a website where producers can get on there and look at that information and decide what is going to be best for their herd. There's also, along with the EPDs, it's observations in terms of feet structure, teat and udder quality, things like that that producers are interested in.
Is there a special process for handling the semen straws?
Yes, it's a very repetitive process. You want it to be repetitive. You want to, when they collect that bull, that semen is cooled down slowly. It goes through a series of coolers that cools it down slowly, and then they freeze it into liquid nitrogen. And so we get it into liquid nitrogen, and you can move that semen from tank to tank, so on and so forth. You do not want to be out of nitrogen or out of nitrogen vapor for more than about 8 seconds at a time. So it's a quick process. Same goes when you're getting ready to breed a cow. You pull that straw out of the tank. You go to a warm water thaw, which is a little container that is electrically controls the temperature, which should be 90 to 98 degrees, and you put the semen straw in there for at least 30 seconds. And then, so we step it up, and then you load your straw into your gun. Most guys will go into their shirt. Some guys go into an AI gun warmer, which is the same temperature as that thaw bath. And then you go into the cow, which is a temperature of normally about a 101.5.
It's kept in what we call semen tanks or liquid nitrogen tanks on farm. It's like cryopreservation, and so it can be kept for decades in those tanks. But when you thaw it out, then you put it in a warm water bath, thaw it out for 35 to 45 seconds, and then it's put into a syringe, a long syringe or a gun, we call it an insemination gun, and then it's deposited inside the cow. We go through their cervix, and it's deposited in the uterine body.
Is the amount of semen in the straw more concentrated than if it was a natural process?
No, it is not actually. When a bull services a cow, normally he is ejaculating 30 to 40 million sperm cells, but he's doing it vaginally. With the AI process, normally we're looking at, depending upon the bull and semen quality, which again is regulated by CSS, we're looking at 10 to 20 million sperm cells in that straw. But when we inseminate the cow, we're going through the cervix and doing it in the uterus, so we don't need as many sperm cells, but that also lets one bull service 200 to 400 cows per ejaculate versus just one cow. They can use their parental averages to create an EPD, plus now we can take a snippet of their genetics and we can increase the reliability of those EPDs. However, you still can't beat a bull that may have 10,000 offspring in a year, and it gets you more reliability in that birth weight number. So when I'm talking to a customer about bulls, we look at, one, the calving ease and birth weight EPDs, but then we turn around and look at the reliability. Okay, this is a young bull. He has the chance to change 10 or 15 pounds in his birth weight. But if we go over here to this bull that may be 4, 5, or 6 years old, he's got 40,000 calves on the ground, and that data has been reported, and we know that those calves are going to be between 60 and 70 pounds. And then you take calving ease into that equation, and calving ease is based on the percentage of unassisted births. And so that takes into effect, okay, that calf may be 80 pounds, but was his head and shoulders shaped right that those cows calved easier? And so with that data, we have a lot more of it, and so we can almost all the time say that, guarantee those AI sires to be easier calving than natural service sires.
Actually, it's less concentrated because we're depositing it closer to the site where it's needed. We're being more exact in that, so we can use a more diluted version to be able to make the process work.
Is this considered selective breeding?
Some would call it yes. Others would call it no. We're using semen out of a bull, same as turning a bull out on a set of cows. Yes, we are selecting the sire we are using. A lot of these sires that you see in these AI catalogs are 50 to 100 to $300,000 or $400,000 bulls. So the average producer that runs in this country is a 20 or 30 cow herd cannot afford to go and buy those high dollar genetics to use in their cows, and this allows them to do that. So yes, you could call it selective breeding.
It can be for purebred producers, just because they are wanting to make the best bulls or the best females possible, and they know individually how their cattle measure up. So they can do that, just trying to create the best bull. I mean, we're all in search of a better animal, to be able to meet consumers' needs from a meat quality standpoint, or for our commercial customers for better females. So we will sometimes do that from a purebred standpoint. For commercial producers, they are looking for some way to improve their herd, like if they've got cows that maybe they're too big or too small, to reduce or increase that size, also to make them more efficient, to make the carcasses better so consumers have a better eating quality.
Can you choose sex-selected semen that increases your chance to have either bulls or heifers?
Yes, you can. That is very widely used in the dairy industry. The dairy industry typically wants heifers, and so you see a lot of gender sorted semen in the dairy side. The beef side, it took off when it started and we had the technology. There's only one technology out there today. Nobody's developed anything else. And for the beef guys, that semen is sorted by a laser that takes and looks at sperm cell size. And so it stresses that semen before it is put into a straw and frozen. And so therefore we see a decline in conception rate. And most of the beef producers in this country want as many cows bred at once as possible, and so it's not used very much on the beef side, but yes, very widely used on the dairy side.
That has been in development for decades. When I was in grad school at K-State years ago, we talked about it, but up until about 7 to 10 years ago, it hasn't been available commercially. Now that it is, it's used more on the dairy side, just because dairy females are worth so much more than the dairy males. On the beef side, it's still evolving. If somebody sees a sire that they know they're going to have better bull calves out of him, they may utilize that more on the purebred side than the commercial side.
Why use this process versus turning in a bull? Advantages versus disadvantages?
There's tons of advantages. The biggest one that a lot of people look at this as, well, all right, I've got the expense of AI in these cows, and then either I've got to watch them come back into heat again and AI again, or I've got to turn my bulls out to clean up, because nature's not perfect. A bull on a set of cows, natural service, typically in one cycle, a 21-day period, you will settle about 70% of those cows if you have enough bulls per cow. On the AI side, we are looking at about that 50 to 60% range. But the thing that AI does, one, you get to use more powerful genetics. Two, with synchronization, which is very getting used more and more, synchronization, you can front load your calving season by having you synchronize all those cows to breed in one day, and so therefore it takes and puts all your AI calves into about a 2 to 3 week window. So therefore you get more calves on the ground faster. Those calves have more days to grow before you wean them, or before you go to the sale barn or move on to whatever other part of the system you use. And so so you get a growth factor, a genetic factor, and a time and labor factor. A lot of people look at the time and labor it takes on the front end to synchronize those cows. We're standing here on my ranch, and we started calving 2 weeks ago. My wife and I, we run about 100 cows, and we are just over 50 calves on the ground today in just a little over 2 weeks. And for us that both work off the farm to sustain our farm that we want to do, that's a huge thing, because it's not as huge of a time requirement come calving season. Yeah, we've got about 3 days in the spring that we spend to synchronize those cows, but instead of all those cows calving in 90 days, we shrink that up to about 45.
The advantage is you're going to get all of these cattle bred on one day or earlier in the breeding season, so it's going to help them continue to be in their herd. They're going to maintain that calving interval that we look for. It's also going to create a more uniform calf crop. So there's lots of advantages from that standpoint, but the easy calving on the heifers is probably the #1 use in terms of the heifer deal.
Can a cow or heifer be AI'd at any point, or do they need to be in standing heat?
And so on AI, the way to make that feasible is to synchronize. And what we use is naturally occurring hormones that occur in their body, but we basically set them up so they're going to come into heat at that time. And the value of that is that we can come in here and we can breed all these animals at one time. The calves are sorted off if we're breeding cows. They're run through at one time. They're not going to all calve on the same day. They'll calve over a 2-week window. But by using those naturally occurring hormones, that allows us to go ahead and basically make it an appointment AI situation.
Every one of those hormones are a synthesized hormone from the cow herself. Every one of those shots we give is the one that lasts the longest is 15 minutes. We give that cow that shot, it is in and out of her system in 15 minutes. You can look at different vegetables, and they've got more hormone in them than that piece of meat that came from that cow or that steer or that heifer or whatever.
If needing to be in heat, how do they keep track of this and know when to breed?
It's as simple or as complicated as you want to make it. There are several different protocols that you can use. Every AI sire catalog has the NAAB approved synchronization protocols in the back of it. But probably the most widely used on the beef side, I'm not real sure about the dairy side, but is a 7-day cedar program. And what that involves is on day 0, you use a cedar, which is, now I'm gonna lie. Anyway, it is a product that is a vaginal insert with progesterone on it, and you leave that in for a week. With that, the insertion of that, you give a shot of GnRH, which is gonadotropin releasing hormone, which causes either them to ovulate or start the growth of a new follicle. After 7 days, you remove that cedar and you give a shot of prostaglandin, which actually brings that cow into heat or into her cycle. Then depending on whether you're working with heifers or cows, you can time breed them. Heifers at about 54 to 60 hours, cows at about 60 to 72 hours, depending on your operation. Also, if you're hiring somebody to do it for you, that's probably the most typical process. A lot of guys that choose to do it themselves that have been to AI school, they will watch heat on those cows for 3 or 4 days and AI them as they see heat on those cows, which gives them a little bit of an increased conception rate, but is also another time factor in choosing what you want to do and how much time you have.
Is this process hard on the cow or heifer?
No, not, and I stress wholeheartedly with my customers to look at and use low stress cattle handling systems. I work in several different facilities in 3 different states, and that is probably the upfront expense that a lot of people see that you get on longevity, is spending the money on facilities and being able to handle those cattle calmly. Once we run our cows, and then my father-in-law run a set of fall cows, and we AI everything on our place. And the first couple years, when we started this process, we'd put a new facility in. It took us some learning, a lot of learning for us, and it took some learning for the cows. Now, they know how it flows. It doesn't bother them. As long as you're handling them calmly, not stirring them up, not stressing them out when you're working them. Plus, on top of that, for those customers that I work with that don't have those facilities, we offer, as part of our service, as a portable corral system that we can go anywhere, set up, if they don't have the facilities to do this, and work their cattle as calmly as possible. Plus, the other side on the AI, in the AI industry, we've learned that the less stress that we put on those cows or heifers, the better conception rate we get. And with that, over here in the background, we use portable AI barns, and it's a double alley barn that the cows walk in. It's fairly dark. It's not really dark, but it's fairly dark, and those cows do not see people until once they walk into that barn. They stand loosely, their heads are not caught, they're not squeezed, and they stand on dirt, not concrete, nothing else. Helps them stand more calmly, and we've seen anywhere from a 5 to 10% conception rate increase just by using those AI barns. We may offer our portable pen, but no matter what customer's place we go on to, we take that portable AI barn with us because it helps handle those cattle so much calmer.
No, actually it's very easy. In terms of, we give them a shot. Their cattle are vaccinated every year just to prevent disease. And so they're given a series of shots. There's a vaginal insert, but it's very low stress. And there's been a lot of things in the last 20 years that have really helped evolve cattle handling. Not only facilities, and these are a great set of facilities here, but it's also in the way we handle cattle to reduce the stress. And so a lot of cows, when they get it, they've been through this for a couple years, they kind of just know what way they need to move. The calves sort off, they're just sorted off for a short period of time, and so it actually makes it less stressful.
Is the process hard on bulls?
No, it's really not. Those bulls live the life. I mean, those bulls have grass traps they run in. They've got a pen that's probably, depending on the barn, anywhere from 10 to 20 foot or 12 to 20 foot pen inside a barn where they can get in and out of the weather. They're fed morning and night. Matter of fact, it's actually an interesting thing to see. And as far as the collection part of that, those bulls, normally they'll collect a bull 2 to 3 times a week, and they know their day, because those bulls are standing there at the gate, ready to go do their thing when the day comes.
No, actually it works out very good from that standpoint too. And that's one of the reasons in the last couple of years AI has even become more popular, is because bulls got more expensive. But when we AI, then we still have to use a cleanup bull. And so by reducing the amount that we need and the stress associated with that, And also, if you have a bull that goes bad, you've got AI that's kind of you started that way, and so you don't have a reduction in your calf crop as bad if you have a bull that goes bad. So it actually works out very good.
Is AI more cost effective?
It definitely was in the last 2 years because bull prices were so much more expensive. But when you look at the value of a uniform calf crop, using proven genetics, and getting everything grouped up and knowing what you're going to have for a product, then it's still very cost effective to do.
Is there a process used to bring cows or heifers into heat at the same time?
So with synchronization, it has evolved so much in the last 20 years. When I was in grad school at K-State, it was very difficult. There was an implant you put in the ear. Now it's just like a vaginal insert that you leave in for a week. You pull that out and you give shots at the front end, the back end, and then you run them through an AI. So it's much easier to manage, and it's easier on the cattle as well.
AI can be a valuable tool for the cattle producers, but each producer should evaluate their own operation to determine which type of breeding system to use, considering costs, need for improved genetics, and management capabilities. Remember, you can see every program of this series by going to SmokyHillsTV.org. On behalf of the Real Ag crew, I'm Kyle Bauer, and this has been Real Ag.
Production of Real Ag is made possible in part by an underwriting grant from
the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by farmers.